Hey, Jess.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing marvelous. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. It's good to
Very
join you
good.
again.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for taking the time out. And I know you are in a different time zone. What time is it there? It's about 9
It's
a.m.
yeah, 9 a.m. Friday for me.
Okay, 9 a.m. Friday. So we are Thursday, 6 p.m. So you're winding up, I'm winding down, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
And did you have your workout already?
Yes, and I went for a coast walk. It is very hot in Perth this week, so yeah.
So give us, I'm a desert dweller myself, so when you say hot, give me a temperature.
Okay, so I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, is that correct? But
Yep.
currently 31 degrees Celsius, and it's 9 a.m.
Okay, 31 degrees. So let me see. That is about um oh, I should be able to do this. My 87. And so what's your humidity?
Oh, good question. I don't know. It
Yeah,
feels
are you
very
guys are you
humid.
guys
It's
pretty
very
humid?
sticky. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
very
sticky at
sticky.
the moment. Yeah. I think that's what makes it feel worse is the stickiness.
Yeah. See, we in Arizona, we don't have much humidity. Although today we had rain, but in our
Oh,
summers we
okay.
are super, super dry and
Dry.
super, super nasty. Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon that's the worst. I would rather sticky hot.
At least a little bit. It's easier to breathe when
Yeah.
it's humid,
Yeah.
right?
That's true. That's true.
So I think, we wanted to talk about kind of, framing your mind for 2021, just kind of getting into mindset and what people should be thinking about as we leave a year that for many people was just a horrible disaster for a variety of reasons, some
Mm,
more serious than other reasons. People had, health issues and in some situations, death,
mm,
loss of employment, loss of family members, just a real, social life has completely changed, fitness has changed, like very gloomy, and in the United States, we had, political issues and a whole political overhaul. So just all this stuff just happening. And I feel like it would be valuable for everybody to kind of for us to talk through like some of the tips, right? Some of the things that you do, some of the things you do when you coach, and just what we should do in 2021 to make a difference, right? Because the way I look at it, we can't just expect 2021 to be different. We actually have to do something to make
yeah.
it different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think a lot of the time, even if we just kind of zoom out from this year, I think when we start to wind down and we head into the new year, everyone's like, new year, new me. Expectations around big changes and everything's going to be different as soon as the clock hits midnight, right? But I think one of the things that I've learned and that I see is, like you said, like nothing will ever change no matter what's happened in that year unless you make a change, unless you start to put what you want into action. And I think if it's anything that all of us have learned this year is to have a mindset of resilience and that we can overcome a lot. There's a lot, like you mentioned, that has been happening individually, personally, globally. And I think the way to go into 2021 is to know that you are resilient, you are strong, you can make a change, and everything is temporary. I think we forget this as human beings because especially when it comes to very low vibrational emotions, we think we're going to stay there forever. We think this is the worst and that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, for lack of a better saying. And I think that the first step is to realize that everything is temporary, whether it's good, whether it's bad. That's just the way that the world works. And if you want to make a change, like, you have to start getting into the mindset that yes, maybe this year wasn't the best, maybe you had loss, maybe you did lose your job, maybe you did lose a loved one, or maybe on the opposite end, you gained a lot. I think to take a step back and to look at like what's actually happened in this year, because I can guarantee that even though it may feel overall and within the collective consciousness that everything's been so negative, I'm sure there's been things that people have learned and people have taken on.
I want to latch on for a minute to this idea of temporary, you know, preparing emotionally and mentally to realize that something is temporary versus this permanence, right? And I remember in the United States, at least, when the quarantine first happened, right? It happened around in March. And, what was said was, hey, this is just like a 3-week quarantine, no big deal. So people are like, oh, this is going to blow over. It's really not a big deal. And it's funny because although that was a dangerous mentality to have at the time, because a lot of people didn't take it seriously, it's actually a very useful mentality to have because that's kind of the outlook you look at everything in life with, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I feel like most of us, we have a hard time getting out of, it's good to live in the present, right? But we have a hard time understanding that everything is really blocked into chunks of time. Like the sun's always going to rise tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you tell your people who are enrolled in your program and people who ask your advice for, hey, how do I actually engage in an actionable, step to change how I view or how I want to make changes in 2021? Like, what are some of the things that you tell people?
I think it's important, first and foremost, to ask what you really want. I think as we start to roll down and, social media takes a big influence of this, we see a lot of things that are happening and what a lot of people are doing and what is forming, and we latch onto ideas of a reality that we think we want. I think, you need to go inside and ask yourself, what do I really want from the year? What do I really want from myself? What's supporting the life that I want to live? And, it can be super overwhelming to look at the next 12 months, right? And I always like to break it down into smaller chunks, go by the quarter, go by each quarter, each 3 months, and ask yourself, okay, split it up. So this is one thing that I give my clients is split it up into the 4 areas of health. You've got your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual areas of health. Ask yourself 1 to 3 things in each of those areas that are important for you, that are not dependent on your partner or your family or anything like that, and ask what is important by the next 12 months, next 3 months, 6, whatever you want to do that's easier for you to achieve, and for you to feel like, I used to ask myself years and years ago, what's going to make me happy? And I've changed that in the past couple of years to what's going to make me feel fulfilled, because I think that's so much stronger. I think that's it's better than to base your happiness on something, because happiness, again, it can come in many different spectrums, right? It can be, my happiness is probably completely different to how you view happiness. So really asking yourself, okay, what is going to make me feel fulfilled inside? What's going to light me up? What's going to keep me going? What's the emotional attachment to the why? I think it's very important to ask yourself, what's the reason I really want this? Because that's what we forget. We say to ourselves, okay, I want to make X amount of money, or I want to get this type of body, or I want this and I want that, or I want to get that materialistic item. But we fail because, like, I think failure is a great thing. Failure is how we learn. Failure is how we go in a different direction and we take a different step, right? But I think we fail a lot of time with our goals or setting intentions or targets, KPIs, whatever you want to call it, as we go into the new year, because we don't actually have that emotional attachment to what we want. And if you're not emotionally attached to wanting to get somewhere and to make a shift, you are never going to achieve that, because you don't really feel it inside. And so, the first thing is to reflect back on your past few years. What are the things that you have thought that you wanted and you haven't gotten, but you realize, okay, well, I wasn't actually attached to that emotionally, or I didn't actually want that. I saw the idea of that from my friends, my family, social media, and I thought that's what I wanted. Be honest with yourself, be realistic. And, you start now. That's one of the biggest things. I've been this question a lot about New Year's goals, not only from my clients, but friends and people around me. They're like, how do I start? When do I start? We have this thing that's been made up in our mind that okay, let's just put it all off, and then January 1st, we're going to start.
Right.
Start
Right.
now, right? Don't you think that's such a recurring theme every single year?
100%.
Is people think like, okay, let's just stop. People like stopping now. What's the date today? The 11th of December, you know? People are probably stopped 2 weeks ago. They're like, it's nearly Christmas. We're winding down. Yes, it's good to wind down, of course, but what's to say you can't still work towards your dreams and desires, you know?
100%. And I think we talked about this last time, that book, Atomic Habits, right? And the idea of a 1% improvement has a compounding effect of whether it's 1% improvement every week or every month. That 1% improvement over time just has crazy compounding effect to actually get you to your goals and above them and beyond them. And I always like to throw personal anecdotes out. You know, for me personally, I had my own, you know, fitness journey and health journey. And, you know, I hadn't lifted a weight seriously in my life until maybe 2 years ago. And, you know, I'm a busy attorney and I have a million things going on. So I'm like, you know what? I am going to take, I had these 2 dumbbells. You know, I'm going to take these 2 dumbbells, it's 25 pounders, right? Nothing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in my bedroom in a place where I could see them. And I'm going to take 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. That's it. And I'm just going to do weight exercises, whatever I can do, you know, 5 sets of, you know, 10 reps, something basic. And what happened is it created a pattern that I built off of, because then it was like automatic. Oh, it's 5 p.m. I'm supposed to be doing something. What am I supposed to be doing? I'm supposed to be lifting those weights that I'm staring at. And then it graduated from there to I hired a personal trainer. Now I'm getting nutrition advice and I'm getting my macros down. I'm getting my micronutrients and I'm weighing my food. And it's looking back, if I tried to do that then, there's no way. There's just no way I would have gotten into fitness and you know, lifting weights, because it was just too much of a burden. And now I'm a schedule that's 6 days a week. So how do you get from 0 to 6 days a week with measurable progress? And it's exactly the 1% rule. It's, you know, I found that, right, that little granular shift in my daily activities and in my mindset to force a habit.
Yeah, I think that's so important to note that we set a goal and it's like we want to get from that goal straight away, or we go all in. And you know, this is coming, I'm one of the most impatient people ever, but when you have such a huge goal, you need to break it up into chunks and know that it's going to take time. Just like, imagine if you went all in and you're like, okay, I'm going to book this personal trainer, I'm going to do my nutrition, you probably would have failed, you probably would have given up, and you probably would have gone in this cycle of, okay, well, I'm starting again, it's too much, I'm just going to go. And this is a mistake we make. Like, if it's anything anyone takes away from this life, is break what you want, not just for the new year, for the rest of your life, into small chunks. Break it down. You know, don't try go all for it all in one time, because it will give you the feeling of, oh wow, this is so overwhelming, I can't do this, like it's too much to take on. And I've been there, you know, I'm someone who I'm like, oh yeah, you know, it looks big, but you can go for it. And then you start to do it and you're like, wow, okay, there's a lot to it. So break it down, start the small things, just like you did. You know, you started with those weights that are in your room, you start 10, 15 minutes a day, and then you go from there. And now you're working out 6 days a week, right? So I think it's really important that to look at your big goals and the big things that you desire, and to help with the shift in your mindset is to break it down, make it smaller, make it digestible, so you're not overwhelmed at the start.
You know, one of the things that I think people should also do is, I always ask this question, I ask my staff this, and we're actually doing a call and a commitment from everybody to do this, which is develop a social contract among your peers where you speak out your intention, your commitment. You actually say, look, this is what I'm going to do. Enough talk, right? This year was difficult for a lot of people, but maybe there was that e-commerce business you wanted to start, or that fitness program you wanted to do, or you wanted to make X percentage more dollars per year. You know, make a verbal commitment and actually have an accountability partner. Like in my office, we're going to do it office-wide. We're going to say, speak actionable things, something you can put on a calendar. and say, did I do this on this date and time, and spread it out. And I like what you said earlier. It's December 10th. I've got Christmas to think about how I'm going to make 2021 different. And I think that's a gigantic mistake. I think you should start doing the calendaring and mental prep for it now, so you can transition into actionable things, because we're all going to get busy again.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important what you said, that have an accountability partner, because, and this is one thing that I have had this year as well, a couple of accountability partners, and it's powerful. It's powerful to speak what you want out loud. It's powerful to write it down in words, in your journal, on a notepad, on your Google Docs, whatever it may be. But it's even more powerful to have someone do, like I do check-ins over Zoom, right? Because all of my accountability partners are all over the world. So do check on Zoom every couple of weeks. And it's powerful to sit down and be realistic and have someone you trust and can be honest with you. I think it's good to find someone who can actually be like, okay, like that's really good, but you haven't actually, reached this KPI, or you said you would do this, and have people who pull you up on when you're not doing your best, because it's no good to have, someone who's an accountability partner and every week they're like, oh yeah, you're doing good, and there's no feedback offered. So I do think that's a very important part to it, to have an honest person, but to be able to speak that out loud with someone, to go back and forth with your ideas. And it's always good when you have a goal, or you have something you want to reach, a habit you want to develop, to understand it from a different perspective. Because when we get focused as human beings on achieving something, we kind of have this narrow focus, like, okay, this is the only way that it's going to do, and I'm going to go this way. That's why often when we fail, we're like, what, wasn't this the best way? But it's so good to have people around you who is like, okay, well, have you tried this way and tried these few steps, and see it from a different perspective? So I think that's very powerful.
I think, to kind of tie into what you just said, I think who you're associated with in 2021 is going to make a big difference. Because if you are surrounded by, I don't remember who said this exactly, but, show me someone who's successful, and I'll show you, who their peers are, and they'll be just as successful. The idea being, you're sort of a factor or a variant of who you surround yourself with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so in addition to having an accountability partner, I think everybody has to make a commitment to, if I want to change my lifestyle, or like if you want to kick smoking, don't socialize with people whose first reaction is to grab a cigarette, healthy lifestyles. And I think that's a big part of moving into next year, especially while we're still in this, remote working, remote social life thing. I don't think we've gotten used to the fact that, well, I might be in isolation, but I can still associate myself via, like phone calls, instant messaging, even text messaging, being a part of a text message group. Do you have a like a WhatsApp or a text message group that you run? You do? What do you use?
Yeah, so WhatsApp. I love WhatsApp. I actually only really use WhatsApp and Messenger ever since I moved to Bali. I don't use really text message anymore. It's funny, but I have a few groups on there, friends, and also that's how I communicate with my clients as well. But I think it's important to have that form of communication. And touching back on what you said, I think after this year, it's so important that everyone starts to look at who they surround themselves with, who they spend the most time with, what energy they're being around the most, and how that's affecting them. Because I don't think a lot of us really think about who we hang out with and who we associate with enough, especially as you're growing as a person, especially as your mindset's shifting. And it's funny you bring this up, because I had this conversation with someone the other day who's kind of drifting away from a friendship group that they've been friends with for years and years and years and years. And I said, you know what, that's okay, because it doesn't mean you all hate each other. It doesn't mean, you don't support each other. It just means that when you are shifting and you're going into the next level of your life, and you're going into the next version of who you want to be, you're just not aligned with these people, and that's okay. And the mistake that people make is latching on to those old versions of who they were. It doesn't make those people any less. Everyone's equal. It just means that they're not where you are mentally at the moment. They're not where you are emotionally and physically at the moment. And it's about being honest about who uplifts you, honest about who brings you the most value in your life, and who really pushes you to be the best version of yourself, and know that it's okay if you drift away from people you've been friends with for a long, long time. And, you know, this isn't just with friends. This is with family as well. This is with romantic partners. Like, it's hard to be honest when you feel that there's no growth with someone who's been in your life for a long time. It's really, really hard because, you know, as humans, we thrive off connection. We thrive around being with people, right? That's how we're conditioned. And I think, you know, when we get latched into a relationship, romantic or platonic, whatever it may be, we don't want to unlatch from that because we have that form of connection. But if it's anything I've learned over the past couple of years, it's definitely that people come and go in life, and that's okay, but you need to be able to be honest about who your inner circle is, and does your inner circle align with your values? Ask yourself, what are my values? Who am I trying to become? Who am I trying to aspire to be? And do those people help you get there?
That is extremely important, is the last question. Do those people help you get there?
Yeah.
You know, and I, you know, I've spent some time just listening to interviews with people who are at the top of their game, you know, the 1% of the 1%, whether they're comedians or athletes, you know, boxers, musicians. And I'm just really spent a lot of time studying kind of, you know, how they approach life. And it's amazing because some of them are just, again, they associate themselves with the people that are going to beat them into, literally, physically, mentally train them into someone that they want to become. And then you realize, these people are not doing it by themselves, right? There's a whole team for some of these people. And it's always great. Like, another great example is, you know, you hear artists, you know, a great singer, and you're like, wow, he or she is blessed with an amazing voice. But you don't realize how many times they've blown their vocal cords, training to hit the notes and playing with the pianist to match the, you know, the notes in the keys. We just think, we tend to have this belief that, oh, this person's just a natural fill in the blank, right? And I think what this year has taught us is everybody has to hit the reset button, but everybody also has the capability to do that if they have the right resources.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I think you know, we can get very stuck in our ways, and especially if we feel like we've failed or we feel like we haven't quite gotten to where we want to get. It's like, oh, well, you know, there's no point in starting, or I can't start over again. You can always start over again. You can always start from the bottom. It's absolutely fine. And, you know, if you don't fail, like I said earlier, you don't learn of where to go. You don't learn how you can be better and do things better. And you know, if you're watching this and you feel like you've failed in some way, shape or form this year, and you feel like you haven't reached your goals, I think it's, you know, it's having a hard conversation with yourself and being like, okay, well, where can I do better? What can I do better? What did I not do to the best of my ability this year? And a lot of the time, you know, we get stuck by our excuses. We get stuck by doubt and fear, and we allow that to self-sabotage us, and we allow to stay small and to stay in our box. But be honest, like, did you do that to yourself? Did you keep yourself small? Were you too scared to go try something new? Were you too scared to, you know, go out dating or to start a new business or whatever it may be? And because we like to look for external reasons, we like to look, okay, who can I blame? What can I blame? Because that makes us feel better. We don't have to take responsibility if we fail. But you know, if it's one thing I teach my clients is to become self-aware and to take the responsibility when something does not go right in your life. And instead of being like, oh, well, you know, it was all them, or it was all my old boss, like, this is why I couldn't do it. It's like, no, well, what could you have done better? What could you have done to a higher capability than what you already did?
You know, it's interesting. I think on the discussion point of, you know, being hard on yourself and being your biggest critic, I think the opposite's also true. I think this year has also showed a lot of people that, you know, emotional trauma is a real thing. Like, living too much in your head is a real thing. And, you know, there are people who are struggling with mental health problems. And I think this year being separated from people, whether it's your coworkers at work that you got to see every day and laugh with, or family members, whomever. I feel like, people have really drilled down this idea of, like moving into next year, there's a fear that, what if it's just duplicated again, like that trauma, and they're fearing having those emotions again. Like, how do you deal with that?
I think the first thing to realize is, as I said, it's hard to be self-aware when you're so stuck in such a low emotion. But ask yourself, like, be honest. And this is why I'm such a big advocate for journaling and, whatever that means to you, whether it's to have an actual journal or to write it on the notes on your phone, whatever it may be, but to get out, like, why are you feeling these emotions? What has actually triggered it? And to go through your year and be like, okay, well, I'm feeling fearful because of this. I'm scared of this. But remember, as cliche as it may sound, like, whatever you are believing to be true, it is absolutely true. Yes, there are always going to be external circumstances like COVID-19 that you can't control. It's happened, but it's what can you do with those circumstances right now with the things that you can control, right? And so journaling on that, being honest. If you don't like journaling, speak to a loved one, speak to someone that you trust and you care about. Get out those fears. The first step to not being in your head is to getting out of your head. Have a release, whether that is going to the beach and screaming, going for a walk, a long, long walk. Get it out of your head and think about, okay, well, this is why I'm actually scared. This is why I'm doubtful. Like, is 2021 going to be exactly the same? And then from there, it's making room for forgiveness for yourself and giving yourself permission to be gentle on yourself, because like you said, we can be our hardest critics, right? That's how we're built. But it's allowing yourself to be gentle with yourself. Sometimes, like, a lot of us, we're not gentle. We're so hard on ourselves. We're like, oh, well, we should have done this, or this was this. And, I had these relationship breakdowns and, work didn't go to plan. I wanted to get that promotion this year. But it's like, did you do the best that you could do with the circumstances you had at any one point in time? And if the answer is honestly yes, then that is fine. But if you are becoming self-aware and you look at yourself and you're like, well, the answer is actually no. I didn't do the best I could. I didn't, do extra work for that promotion, or I actually didn't put enough energy and effort into my friendship groups this year. That's why we've drifted apart. Like, it's then, okay, how can I be a better friend? How can I be a better worker? How can I be a better businessman/woman? Whatever it may be. So I think first and foremost, be gentle on yourself and give yourself permission to forgive yourself. We forgive everyone else most of the time except for ourselves, because we forget that we are honestly doing the best that we can with what we have right now.
You said something that I thought was really interesting, and that is, getting the release that you need. And I think really two things come to mind. One, it's an amazing thing emotionally to be able to acknowledge that we're all vulnerable, right? Like, when you acknowledge that you are vulnerable, like, so on one hand, you say, I want an ironclad mindset, like nothing's going to break me in 2021. I was sad and upset about something this year, and I got company downsized or closed, or my business is going belly up. But when you also say, you know what, I am just the subject of this, like everybody else, it puts you within a community of people emotionally who are having the same problems as you. Talking out that vulnerability, I think, also has an upside. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. And I actually held a masterclass for my membership women last week on vulnerability and receiving and being able to receive. And a few important points that I brought up was, always be willing to expose your feelings. Always be willing to say what you want and to ask for what you want. We have this thing that when we're hurting, we dismiss our pain, or we try to downplay it by closing off to the people around us, but that's going to do nothing but a disservice to yourself. So be willing to open up and be honest and to slow down and ask yourself, like, when was the last time that you asked yourself what you actually need, in terms of whether it may be physical needs or whether it may be emotional needs, and be willing to open up. And it's okay to be vulnerable. You know, we like you said, we often want to have this mindset that can't be, you know, kept down by anything else, and it's ironclad, and we can't ever feel anything. But it's okay to open up and be exposed. I mean, being exposed is super scary, right? But when you are able to open up about your feelings and be honest about what's really happening, it what happens inside of you, it gives you room to grow. And it also tells your subconscious mind, like, I trust me. I trust that I can do this. I trust that we can heal from this. I trust that I can open up and be vulnerable. Because the more that you push yourself off, you stop yourself from being vulnerable, you stop yourself from receiving, whether that's physical gifts or whether that's, you know, love and affection and care, compliments, right? The more you stop yourself from that, the more that you're literally telling your subconscious mind that I don't deserve this, I don't trust myself, I'm not worthy of this. And then it keeps playing back. So I think, you know, be open as we come into the new year to being more vulnerable around the people that care about you and who you care about.
You know, some of the most resilient people that I've met have gone through some very traumatic experiences, right? Things that are life-changing.
Mm.
I'm just wondering, have you ever, you know, in your sort of transition into what you're doing now, I mean, have you ever felt depressed, or have you ever gone through like what people would describe as clinical depression? Like, has that ever affected you?
Yeah, definitely. So about 9 years now, 9 years, my mum passed away when I was 18.
Oof.
And I remember feeling like you do with grief, like your whole world has stopped. And the thing is, when your whole world stops, the world is actually still moving, but you're stuck there and you're like, can everyone and everything just slow down? Can you stop? And I remember being in this cycle for a couple of years where I really didn't allow myself to grieve, right? If I look back, I thought I was allowing myself to grieve, but I wasn't. I wasn't allowing myself to be vulnerable. I wasn't allowing myself to feel. I wasn't allowing myself to be open to the fact that I'm allowed to go through these stages of, okay, one moment you accept it, you know, it's like the 5 stages of grief, and then one moment you're angry, and then the other moment you're like, hang on, why is this happening? Why did the universe do this? You know, the blame game, the bargaining, like, if I do this, can this please happen? And so I remember, you know, in the first few years of after my mum passed away, I remember feeling so lost, so out of control. And I was seeing a psychologist for a little bit of time, for a couple of months. And I was thinking, no one can help me. No one understands. No one knows what it feels like to be so low. And obviously, you know, of course people do, right? People experience grief. People experience death every single day, right? It's part of life. That's the thing. And now that, you know, hindsight is a beautiful thing. And now that we zoom out from that, I realized that, you know, there were moments during those few years where I would feel so down and so, depressed, definitely
Mm.
depressed, that you feel like you can never make it out. You feel like you can't breathe. You feel like there's like, people are living and life is going, and you're like, well, I can't do this. I absolutely can't do this. Like, how is everyone
And
still living their
isolated.
life? Yeah, so isolated, right? And you know, when you zoom out and I look at it now, and I've definitely gone through my stages of where I've like grieved, and I've dealt with it, and you know, you deal with it on a daily basis, right? It's learning to live a life without that person and accepting that. But one thing that I did was know that I can get through this. And one of the best things, I cannot remember where I read this, heard this, who told me this, but I heard something, and it said, you know, if you can't get through the next 24 hours, get through the next hour. If you can't get through
Hmm.
the next hour, get through the next 30 minutes. If you can't get through the next 30 minutes, get through the next minute. And if you can't get through the next minute, get through your next breath. And I always used to remember that every time I just felt just lost and in a dark, dark place. And I thought, and I kept reminding myself, okay, if I can just make it through one more breath, I can make it through the next. And you keep going, because when we're in that dark, isolated, sad, depressing state, of course, the next 24 hours, that's such a long road. That's
Right.
such a long road, right? And so if it's anyone that's listening and you've gone through times like this, or remember this for the future. And it doesn't mean you have to deal with like death or grief in that sense. Grief comes in different versions. Grief can not just be associated with death, of course, but if you go through moments, just like I know people have this year, feeling very isolated, feeling very, very low, very depressed, and you feel like you're not in a state where you could ever get out of, just get through your next breath. Get through your next breath, because I promise that is one of the best things that I ever learned to do. And it's so true. And I share this with my clients, I share this with my friends all of the time, is that don't focus on the next day. Don't focus on, it's 9 a.m. now and you've got a lunch to go to. Don't focus on that. Just focus on being where you are right now. And it helps so much, because what happens physically is that you are calming down your central nervous system. You are actually regulating your emotions. Again, you're feeding to yourself that it's okay to slow down. It's okay to trust yourself, because when we go through something traumatic, when we go through trauma, and we touched on this a little bit in our first live, is that it deregulates our emotion. It deregulates our central nervous system, and we start to live. And this is what was happening when I was going through the first few years of grief. I was, my body and the way I was acting was based on a nervous system that was very wired, that was ready. You have your fight or flight. I was in that fight, right? Constantly. And I was feeling anxious constantly, but that became normal to me. That emotional system became normal. And so whenever I started to feel, an emotion that was on the higher level of the emotional ladder, whether it's happiness, joy, gratitude, blah, 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 your subconscious mind automatically starts to tell you, hang on, why are you feeling like this? This isn't normal to you. Why are you feeling safe? Why are you feeling gratitude? Why are you feeling joy? This isn't you. And so you start to tell yourself, yeah, no, I shouldn't be feeling this. And you go back, you condition yourself to go back to the state that you've been living in. And so that's one of the hardest things. And I know so many people are going through this year, is to regulate your nervous system, your emotional system back to a place of, I guess you could say equilibrium, but to whatever feels peaceful to you, inner peace. That's what inner peace is. And so if you are, feeling that right now, is that, you're in this wave of, you've been conditioned this year from feeling in a certain way that you're not used to, and you're like, okay, I know this isn't right, but I don't know how to feel it. Remember that you can get out of that. You can. And things that I say to my clients to start to regulate your nervous system is, yes, number 1, breathing. Number 2, journaling. Number 3, start meditating, whatever your form of meditation is. I have clients, their form of meditation is literally lay down, put on some binaural beats, meditate in silence. Other people, their form of meditation is going for a run for an hour and they just zone out. So I always encourage that whatever that form of meditation is to you, where you feel connected to yourself, you feel inner peace, go do it. Making sure that you connect with nature, making sure you get out, whatever it may be, a walk, a big long hike, or going to the beach, swimming in the ocean, getting some sun. That is so important, connecting to nature and making one small promise to yourself every day. Again, that creates that form of self-trust to regulate your nervous system.
It's interesting. You said, tuning your nervous system and habit. What I learned was you can reprogram habits, and emotions can be formed through habit, right? Like trauma. Some people, when they go back and read that email that their pissed off client wrote them, they get that feeling of anxiety, right? The rush and the adrenaline. Or the opposite, when you look at that picture of your sweetheart on your desk or on your phone, it gives you this calm and cooling. those are things that you can do as a matter of habit and practice, right? And it's like meditation, like you said, getting yourself in that zone is also a habit. Like you can actually train that part of your brain, and you don't have to be in a state of hypnosis to be in that state of calm. You can actually train yourself that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is so important. I think that's such a good point, is that you know, when you say meditation, like people are like, oh yeah, let's sit in silence and, you know, just try to, be silent. But it's about training yourself to be in what your state of hypnosis is. How can you connect back to yourself? I think that is so, so important.
And there are physical actions that you can do as you're thinking about 2021 and how you want to start every day. There's literally things you can physically do to trigger getting in the zone. Like for me, one of my favorite things to do is I love working out of coffee shops. Like that's my thing. I go to these local coffee shops and I'll sit, and sometimes I'll put on headphones. Sometimes I won't. And have people asking me like, how do you as a lawyer, like how can you focus in a noisy coffee shop? And it's the craziest thing, because for me, that puts me in a meditative state. Because suddenly I'm like, you know what, all this noise, if it's too quiet, I'm now focused on what's going on. I kind of just disappear.
Yeah.
You know, I become another sort of grain of salt on the beach. I'm a casual observer. I'm here and I'm in my zone, and I put my headphones on and I'm on to the, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and sometimes I'll sit, I won't even realize it, for 6 hours. In that chair, you know, other than getting up to refill my latte or going to the bathroom. And you don't even realize, like, so when you get to that state of mind, it forms powerful pathways in your brain too, where it's habit forming, and you can control these emotions and focus. So this is kind of a different, like you said, it's a different side of being in a meditative state.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, it's good to recognize that. And, you know, in regards to that, one thing over the past couple of months that I've been doing work-wise, that, you know, people will probably hear this and be like, what, how can you do that? So I've been rewatching on Netflix or Stan, just different series that I've watched hundreds of times. So I've gone through all of Suits, I've gone through all of Breaking Bad, I'm back onto Gossip Girl. But one thing is, because they're so easy to listen to, and because I've watched it, I don't need to be involved. I will literally just have my phone, my AirPods in, I'll have that playing on my phone while I'm on my laptop, and I just completely zone out. And to other people, they may be like, oh well, what a distraction, you're watching a show. But I'm like, well, no, I've watched it before. It's so easy to follow. And for some reason, I can just completely zone out. And I can go like 3-4 hours. I've obviously gone through about 4 episodes. I haven't even realized, but I've zoned out. And, you know, for me, that's just getting into a different state of mind. And it's just training yourself. Will this always be effective? Probably not. But for right now, and this is the thing, like, it's always be fluid in how you find your meditative state. Always be fluid in how you are training your brain, and try different things. And I think, you know, back to what you said before of, you know, it's how you choose to react and to train your brain. And even small things like, you know, this is going into a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy, but example is, you know, choosing how you are going to train your emotional system. So for instance, you know, you're stuck in traffic. There's 2 ways to respond. There'll be the person who's beeping their horn, who's swearing, who's getting agitated and fired up and angry. Then there's the other person who's sitting there and is like, yeah, okay, this sucks, but let's just put on a podcast or like start singing music. There is 2 completely ways that you condition your nervous system right now. And I think that example is so powerful, because yes, is it annoying that you're stuck in traffic? Of course. Who likes traffic? No one, right? But you are telling yourself that it's okay, let's go into a state of calm. And you're not riling up that nervous system, because if you keep doing that every single time, then yes, your reaction, your nervous system almost is going to anticipate that the moment you get into that car, it's like, all right, well, we're riled up right now. We're anxious right now. We're stressed right now. What's about to happen, right?
You know, something that's I personally like to do, I'm sort of an experimentalist. Like I like to experiment with mind body things. And like I firmly believe that physical change is also a great way to change, to peel the layers off of something that you want to change. For example, start small. You're working from home, great. Change the orientation of your desk. Like, I'm still in the same office. A few people have noticed this. I'm in the same office, in the same chair I was in the last few lives and Zooms, but I have an L-shaped desk. So all I did was I'm actually using the other side of the L. Instead of facing this way, I'm facing this way. And people are like, oh, your room looks so much bigger. I'm like, dude, there's a whole part of my room you haven't seen yet. It's just I changed my orientation. But it's funny, now the door is on a different way. Now my brain is like, oh, this is a new environment. Like, I'm looking at things that are different. I'm seeing my guitar's on my left. I'm gonna have a painting here. My screen looks different. My neck feels different. So everything's different. Small change. Didn't cost me $1.
Yeah, exactly.
And I tell people this too, my friends. I'm like, you should reinvent yourself every couple of years. What do you mean? Are you crazy? I'm like, just do a little pretending and say, I'm going to literally dress slightly different.
Yeah.
If you're used to dressing really casual, dress slightly more formal.
Yeah.
If you have long hair, maybe style your hair a little differently. If you're a dude, maybe you want to grow and style your beard a particular way, or shape. And literally those small granular things actually impact how you perceive yourself and prepares you for change.
I love that point. It reminded me, so a couple of months ago, one of the topics on my membership was mindset, and in particular money mindset. So one of the workshops I held was about abundance in general, not just in regarding to money. And I said it's a trick I learned a few years ago. I said to all the women on my membership, and anyone, male and female, can try this, but I said, how often has there been a time where you have bought some clothing and you're like, oh, I'm going to save that for a good, to go out and get dressed up. I'm going to save that for something special, right? Let's not think about special events such as weddings and stuff, but you're just like, oh, I'll save that for like a nice dinner. And I said to them, stop doing that, right? Because first of all, that's living in a lack mindset. Second of all, why don't you, whatever you're thinking about, because I know every woman and maybe every male has some clothes and they're like, oh, I'm only going to wear that at a special dinner or something like that. And I said to them, this week, whatever you have in your mind that is in your closet that you save, like that dress or that skirt, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to wait till I go out to dinner to wear that. Go wear that to a breakfast that you have, or just go wear that to the shops, right? And see how you feel. I was like, this is an experiment I want you to do. All of those women did it. And they got back to me and they said, I just felt, one of them was like, I literally just wore this really nice dress that I was going to save for dinner. She's like, not too fancy, but I could dress it down a bit. But I just went to the shops. I did my food shop. And she goes, I just felt so beautiful and in control. I just felt like such a different woman. She was like, it was so weird because I kind of put this dress on a pedestal that, oh yeah, like it's a really nice dress. I can't just wear that to the shops. And I said, it changes who you are. It changes how you perceive yourself. And I was like, it's such a small thing. Stop withholding these types of things. So what you said, reinvent yourself, do something different. Like that is just, everyone listening, go do it. You have like a piece of item in your cupboard that you're like, oh yeah, I'll wait for that dinner or that event. Go wear that to something different. Go dress up a little bit for breakfast, and it feels good. It feels nice. And you feel like you have a different persona. And I think that's important as well, rather than getting stuck in the same stagnant cycle of doing the same thing.
I literally, before we got on this live, it's 6:50 p.m. here now, and sunset in Arizona is right around 5:30. I'm like, I need to be in the vibe of winter and evening. So I literally put this scarf on to prepare myself for, this is evening and this is winter. But you know what? That's what it's about. Like, you get to do those things, and again, this is stuff I've already had. I feel like everybody has the gateway to do that, do the change maker, be a catalyst for the change they want, by just doing these small, little granular steps, one foot in front of the other. Let me ask you this. I always like to ask people, like, what does the next chapter of the book that you want to leave behind in history, what do you want that to look like? Like, that's how I approach my life, right? So same question to you. What does your chapter, which is going to be 2021, specifically January, right around the corner, what does that look like for you?
For me, 2021 is going to be about impact, making a bigger impact and being able to connect with a lot more people in my network, do a lot more collaborations, and be able to, I think one of the best things about social media is being able to connect with people all over the world. This is how we connected, and I think it's so beautiful, and I want to make a bigger impact in everything I do, whether it's, you know, my free content or my paid content, and that's important to me, to find that connection in as many places as possible.
You know, personally, I've made a commitment to do as many, I like what you said, collaborations, because you don't know the strength of your impact. Like all of these, you know, the live, whether it's a live, most of the stuff that we do, you know, gets recorded and it gets chopped up and we share it here and there. And I've had people come to me a week, 2 weeks later saying, you know what, I just watched or I heard something you said, and you know, that really hit me differently. And you feel good. Like, you know what, even if one person is impacted and they share it with you, that makes a huge, so I've made a commitment that, you know, January, starting now, but definitely January, the biggest dent I'm going to make in 2021 that month is going to be to do more collaborations and open the index. You know, people tend to kind of stick with people that they are like-minded with. Find somebody you're totally opposite with, like the yin and the yang, you know, and have a conversation and expand yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's important for me, you know, all of next year as well, is to really open up different avenues of different perspectives of the world. Like, I love hearing different perspectives of how people live their life. And, you know, it doesn't mean I'm always going to agree, or it doesn't always align with my values, but I just love hearing about it, because I think it's so fascinating to be like, wow, like, this is how you are seeing the world and your reality, and this is the way you do things. And I think that's important for everyone to understand, is you don't have to agree with the way someone lives their life. You don't have to agree with the way that, you know, someone's doing things, or how they make their money, or whatever it may be. But to be exposed to different perspectives of life and different ways of living, I think that's great character building. Because I know I've definitely heard things from a few years ago, you know, the person I was 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still stuck with me today. And I'm like, wait, no, some of those things, like, I start to align with now. But back then, like, definitely not. So I think, you know, that's one, if it's anything for the whole of 2021, is definitely connect with as many different people, collaborate with as many different personalities, learn about different things as well, because that's important to me.
You absolutely have to align yourself every so often with somebody that's the polar opposite of you. Literally yesterday, I was having this conversation with a gentleman. We had dinner at my house. He could not be more different than me. He's a Caucasian male who's from, you know, Kansas, which is like, you know, an area of the country, this is according to him, that what we call redneck, meaning like totally like hillbilly, backwards, uncultured, racist. If you don't look like him, you're not a human being mentality that he's surrounded with. And here we are having a conversation over dinner. He's like, you know, Raees, I was never like that. But, you know, if you looked at me, you might think I'm like that because of where I'm from. And so we've become really good friends over the past few years. I went to his wedding, and it's just interesting to see, if I never extended the hand and said, you know, who are you? And let's talk, let's get to know it, we would never learn from one another. And I think going into 2021, a big theme for everybody should be the world around you is, well, it's very similar. Everyone's very similarly situated. There's so much different stuff going on out there that you have to dive into. You have to meet people who have these different perspectives.
That's important for growth as well. It's important for you to take on and think about things differently, and to understand, like, it's good to kind of, what am I trying to say? It's good to kind of knock you out of your own reality, and because, you know, we are the main character of this game we are playing. So what's our sole focus? Ourselves. And I think it's good to get knocked out of that and be like, okay, wow, there's this other character in this game that I'm playing and they're completely different. I don't agree with anything, but that's how people are living their lives. But then it's so amazing to also align yourselves with someone. I met someone recently through a girlfriend of mine that just got married, and we're like the same person. And it was just so amazing to come in contact with this person and have the same personality. So I think it's such a beautiful thing.
And here we are talking from across the world about from two totally different perspectives, two totally different backgrounds, academically, business wise, but we're talking about the same thing and talking about habits that everybody can implement, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's great.
So I guess before we, call it a day, what is the one thing, let's say starting today, if somebody's listening to whenever point in time, whether somebody's watching this live or they're watching it, tomorrow, what's the one thing that you absolutely, we talked about a lot today, right? What's the one thing that they have to do? What's the one thing they have to do if they really want change for next year?
Decide what you want and just start wherever that may be. If you are looking to start a business, make that Instagram page. Start creating captions. If you decide that you want to leave your job, write your resignation letter today. I think the power in actually deciding and sitting with that is so, so powerful. And we don't do that enough. We're like, yeah, that would be cool. That would be nice. Decide what you want and just start.
As I always like to say, making a decision is literally, it's like the word incision. You're making a cut. You're cutting something off so that you can bring in something new. And I love that ending. I think make a decision. What is it that you want? Who is it that you are? And have that in the back of your mind as you move to 2021. I think that's amazing.
Yay.
Well, this was amazing as usual. I always appreciate your thoughts. Always a great conversation. And so everybody who's listening, if they want to know more about you and what you do, how do they find you?
Come on over to my Instagram. Said this in the last one, but I love a chat. DM me if you have any questions. You can find a lot of the ways to work with me, even free content in the link in my bio. But yeah, come follow, come have a chat with me. That's one of my favorite things, is to connect with as many people as I can.
Wonderful. And when we repost this video, we'll include your handle and links.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been such a great chat, as always.
Absolutely. My pleasure, and likewise. And we'll do this again sometime soon.
Yay.
Great. Enjoy the rest of your day, Jess.
Yeah, enjoy your night. Bye.
Okay. Take care.